Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Square One podcast. We're taking our guests back to square one where they first started their careers or their businesses, and we're going to learn from their failures. Square One's brought to you by Omni Home Services, which represents Chattanooga Home Inspector, Elevate Home Staging Design, Nuclear Pest Control, Radon Eraser, and hopefully some more business entities in the future. I'm your host, Malcolm Godwin. Thank you for listening. Today we got Jen Bunyak with Omni Home Services co-hosting. We got editing by Madison McCann and Speakeasy Production, and we are very excited to announce our super guest, Vincent Phipps. Vincent Phipps, if you don't know the name Vincent Phipps, well, you just don't live in Chattanooga.
You're too kind.
Vincent owns Communication VIP Training and Coaching. We're going to talk about the VIP in just a little bit. Vincent's also a 17-year UTC professor teaching on coaching. His thing is no ums. So if you hear an today, Madison, please just edit ums out, okay? Thank you. I know she does that anyways. Vincent also was at one time ranked 8th in the world by TripAdvisor for the top 10 ghost tour guides in America. He's featured as top 1% of the world's best communication experts, the first person in Chattanooga history to be awarded the National Speakers Association's highest earned honor, and the first African-American in Chattanooga to own communication and consulting business. That's a resume.
I was raised right.
That's awesome.
Thank you, man.
Welcome to the show, Vincent Phipps. How are you?
It is a pleasure and an honor to be here. Thank you all for your time, and I am looking forward to this conversation. Thank you for having me.
Vincent, I have sat in, I think, 2 of your keynote presentations, which were fantastic.
Thank you.
I know the first one was in Nashville, put on by our friend Doug Edrington, and you played one of the coolest games. We were told to put
the name game.
And then tell us about the name game.
Well, first, let me explain the purpose of it. Because as an interactive coach and an interpersonal communication specialist, you always want to make sure that the interaction has a purpose. The point of the activity was to identify how we limit ourselves in communication by asking questions that are convoluted. And the purpose of the activity was every person, if anybody doing this afterwards, you know they stole it from you, okay? So we got this live, we got this recorded. The purpose of the activity was to identify a famous name that's been placed on your back, but you never see the name. But you're allowed to ask unlimited questions to deduce your identity. The catch is every question has to be a yes or a no question. So you can say, am I female? Am I living? Am I in politics? Am I over 6 feet tall? So you have those questions. Most people couldn't even ask the right questions. Well, what do I look like? That question doesn't count. Okay, what's my name? That question doesn't count. So you had to play that activity where you had to have a timed amount to find out your identity just based on limited questions. And it takes about 3 or 4 minutes. Then we do a second version where you're now allowed to ask any question, and then you can pick your identity in about 30 seconds. So it shows just the propensity of how you can be efficient in your communication just on your questions.
This game also serves really well on long road trips with your children and
Absolutely,
animals.
yes.
I have played this game.
Absolutely, you got it.
So you said on the third round or whatever, you can ask any question, not a yes or no answer.
The second round.
Okay.
The second round, the rules change where you can say now you can ask any question. And of course, you have some information already. So you ask more open-ended questions such as, what's my name? Who am I? What field am I in? So those are considered what we call the collector questions. So it shows you how you can be efficient in your communication. So in 2 minutes with limited information, you can be more effective in 30 seconds by asking better questions.
So obviously, you kind of smack yourself in the forehead after the second round when you say, why did I not ask what my name is?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
How long does it take for people to figure that out? Or, I mean, because I think none of us actually figured that out.
Oh, thank goodness. That's why I have a job. I have had the pleasure of teaching and coaching and training for about 27 years. And one of the things that we notice that in our communication, we ignore the obvious and we look for the problem as opposed to the solution. And in every endeavor, when people are given strategies and challenges, it makes it more efficient. Most of us are not given those strategies. We're given education and we're put in scenarios, but we're not taught how to think through them. We're taught what other people do. And when we do those activities, what is mind-boggling is that other people smack themselves in the head. Why didn't I think of that also? It's because we are not being proactive thinkers. We're being reactive. That is where the origin of our anger comes from and our confusion. It's why people don't have good relationships in their personal and professional lives. It's because we're not looking for solutions. We're looking to be reassured. We're looking to have someone validate what we think and what we feel, as opposed to being receptive enough to learning new things. So when we do that game, it's a lot of laughter, a lot of engagement. The bigger the group, the louder it gets. So one of the things that we do is to ask them, why didn't you ask that question? I didn't know we could ask questions. That's the point of the game. So they don't always know that you can use the tools you have to be more effective.
It's interesting that you started this so long ago, because I do feel now is just so painfully obvious that we lack communication. In fact, we have throughout our organization, we go over probably every couple of quarters, there's and it's leaving me right now, but there's a famous general that says, and he put out 3 things win a war. And everybody's like, guns, tanks, strategy. And he says, no, number 1 is communication. And then, okay, number 2, guns, tanks. Number 2, communication. And then they get it by the 3rd one. But we lack, in fact, at Chattanooga Home Inspector, some people are like, you have emailed or texted or called me 17 times. That's a lot. Yeah, you damn right it is, because we have a lot to say and we want to put that in front of you. So I'm glad that you're focusing on that communication when you're in a room full of people that, why didn't I ask that question?
Absolutely.
Yeah, very much. The VIP in communication, VIP training and coaching. Tell us about VIP.
It is a dual meaning. It represents what we teach in very impactful presentations. And the VIP's second meaning, they're also my initials in Vincent Ivan Phipps. What's crazy is that my brother's name is Vaughn. And his middle name is Ein. My brother,
so it's his initials.
It's his initials.
Okay.
Then my father's name is Vaughn. My grandfather's name is Vaughn. So this has been part of our tradition for a long time. So by the time they got to me, they ran out of Vaughn names. So they named me Vincent to keep that VIP consistent. Either that or Vladimir.
I don't know if you could pull off a Vladimir, but...
You know what? You have a better brother named Vladimir. I would rock Vladimir. They call me Vlad for short. Come on, man. I'd rock that.
All right. Okay, Vincent.
Yes, sir.
Your tagline is no ums.
Yes, sir.
I have always loved that, and I always punch myself in the face proverbially when I say the word In fact, I was telling some other people before, probably, 10 years ago, when I was an instructor for the military as a contractor, not a service member, we went through a course called ABIC, which is the Army Basic Instructor course, and it was like 2 months long.
Right.
There was a solid week where we got up and we gave presentations, and you had somebody in the background, click, 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 click. And it's embarrassing how many times we said, and they said, the problem is when you have people in the crowd that notice it, that's all they notice. And they count the ums, click, 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 click. And they say, you sound like you do not know what you're talking about. Because it's a filler word. It's actually not even a word, right?
It is a word.
Okay.
It is a word. It's one of those words that gets a bad reputation.
Sure.
Only on your show, Malcolm, will I defend the today.
What?
The really has a neurological duality. At the psychological, I know.
Come on with it, Vlad.
At the psychological level, if you look at interpersonal communication, for the audience, when they hear someone say the audience draws the perception of this woman, this man is confused. They're unaware. They're losing confidence. They don't know. That's the perception. That's not always the case. Internally, inside our own psychology, we know what we want to say. The is used by us as a place saver, to indicate to the other person, I ain't finished yet. Don't interrupt me. I'm trying to find the right word. I don't want to offend you. I don't want to insult you. I got some certain people around. So you're trying to look for the right word. The left part of the brain controls all of our vocabulary. The right part of the brain has all of our emotional and voluntary muscular movement. So you're having a battle inside your head where the left side says, I want to say this word that I really feel. Right side says, you're gonna hurt their feelings. So you use that as a space saver to find out the right word. Now, all this processes at about tenths of seconds. So what's happening is that the person who's speaking, they are confident. They are comfortable. They're just trying to be selective, but it comes across as doubt and lacking confidence.
Right. Okay, so you're saying the brain is actually saying, if I don't use that filler word, somebody's going to interject and start talking. Okay.
Yes.
So what, as we are trying to properly come up with the word, how do we remove that? What
Gotcha.
Do we use another word? Do we think faster?
Well, thinking faster.
Slower?
No, don't talk slower, especially if you're around a person who is an extrovert. You give them 1 second, it's over. They'll jump in. What you want to do is a combination of one or two things. Either one, pause. Your brain processes words at about 500 words per minute, but you can only speak at about 150. So even if you triple your rate of speaking, that's 450 words per minute. So you can't out-talk your brain. So you just pause to allow your brain to catch up. For example.
Yeah, let's do an example.
I paused.
Okay.
Now notice you didn't interrupt me. You were close though.
Oh, yeah. I was rooting you on.
Now, the second thing you want to do is go ahead and use that space saver, but you use vocalizations. For example, you say, I want to find the right way to say this. Give me a second. Or, I'm glad you asked that. I've been asked that before. Let me find the right way to make sure it comes across clearly. So you say those pre-qualifying statements to let the other person know I'm processing, and you'll sound more polished instead of the ums or the us.
This is a rider downer to the crowd, okay? So an acceptable thing to do would be repeat their question.
You could do that also, absolutely. Yes, sir. That buys you some time.
So how do you pause without being interrupted? Is it acceptable to be like, and throw a finger up?
As you're holding out that finger, it can be, make sure it's the right finger.
Depends on the conversation.
One of the things that you want to do is to always be verbal. Some people do not recognize nonverbal cues. So hold up your finger, hold up your hands, eye rolls. Those will not register with about 46% of the population. They'll totally miss it. These are the folks that don't get sarcasm or eye rolls. It'll be lost on them. You vocalize. You say, I'm thinking about it. Give me a second. I'm processing. Also, it's not just the that is one of those filler words. We unnecessarily substitute ums with wells and so's and basicallys and literallys and I was likes and all of these other low-calorie words that bring us no vocabulary nutritional value. So what you want to do instead, you like that one?
I love this.
So what you want to do instead is to just speak. Don't worry about trying to find the right words. Our audiences don't need perfection. They need clarity. They need authenticity. And when you're on a podcast or on a radio station or on stage or in front of people, we have this unnecessary bravado of we have to be the professional. We have to use proper grammar. That's not always the case. People want real authenticity. There are cases where people would use deliberately to show that they are a regular person, that they're flawed. I've seen people who have the more credentials. If they're speaking to folks, they don't have the same credentials. They'll use those intentionally just to make themselves seem relatable. It's all strategy. It's all strategy.
That's impactful. We're going to jump into questions here that you filled out. The question that I would have, that you filled out, not all of our guests do, so thank you for that. When you say if we have the ability to replace with basically and did you know, I was thinking, whatever it is that as bad to the audience or is it better?
It depends. You never know what your audience is thinking. Different people have different backgrounds. I know that my mother taught English for about 30 years, and education was always something that was taught to be prodigious in our home. So if I ever said or yep or no or fixin' or gonna or getting, I would be reminded that that is not the way that you're supposed to speak. I also have friends whose parents were a little more lax. They went to different type of schooling and certain things were not emphasized. So you never know what your audience is forecasting or what they are thinking. You want to make sure you're comfortable. There are people who are uncomfortable with the ums. There are people who are uncomfortable with the so's and the you know what it means and the basicallys and the literallys. First, you have to be comfortable. Don't focus so much on what you think your audience is doing. You've got to be comfortable because an audience wants authenticity. They want you to be relatable and they want you to be good. If you look at comedians or if you look at actors, some of them, when they talk like this and they have this accent, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter because that's who they are. If you are too polished and too, don't trust them. So you want to make sure that whoever you are, you're speaking in your authenticity.
First off, shout out to your parents. Great job to them.
Oh, thank you, sir.
In a world where we live, where we need better parents.
Yes, sir. I was fortunate.
Very, very fortunate. It's so funny that just how we're talking here, I have, knowing your audience, I find myself in your class that we went to a couple months ago, which was called
True. Improve your public speaking and presentation skills.
We got any of those coming up?
Yes, sir. We have 2 more coming up, June the 28th and also September 27th. Those were the next 2 classes in Chattanooga.
They're both here in Chattanooga.
They're both in Chattanooga. And there's one December the 6th in Atlanta. Now, the TRUE stands for your target, your rationale, your uniqueness, and your expertise. Your target, your rationale, your uniqueness, and your expertise. That's TRUE.
I'm not going to give away what happens at the beginning of this class.
Oh, don't do it, man.
I'm not. But I do find myself sometimes in a relaxed state like this with my arms crossed.
Yes, sir.
And I also think Vincent would smack me right now. Vlad would come out, and I'm like, I have to just make sure that I'm thinking about that. We're going to move on to some questions, but first I actually want to modify a quote that you said during your class that I've taken, and I may have butchered it, so if I have, then we'll edit it out. But you said
it's out of love. I got it. It's out of love.
You said something so profound to me that you said, I think you put it in question form, but after it came out in statement, you said, you always... 100% of the time, you represent yourself,
yes, sir.
Your company,
yes, sir.
Your race, yes. Your family,
yes, sir.
All of the time. I had to put that out to some of our guys because, hey, you're smoking a cigarette, or whatever. Yeah, but I'm doing it on the side of the gas station, but you're in company uniform. Or, it's easy for us not to think someone is watching us.
Yes, sir.
Because we are always representing everything we're involved with.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Was that correct?
That was fantastic.
Okay.
I think I like your version. Now I'm still it back. We're always representations of who we are. I was out running and I had on my company t-shirt and there was a person who was in line at the gas station being less than pleasant. And I was trying to get me a Gatorade and the other person was being not very kind and the person was new, trying to find the right button. And when I came up and I said, "You're doing great." I said, everybody has a rough first day. I said, that person's problem is not your problem. I said, you're doing great. And they just started breaking in tears and, oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. And then they end up coming to the CHA, the Chattanooga tourism event. And the guy came up to me and he had owned the restaurant and he says, "You don't remember me, do you?" And I said, "No, sir." He said, "You came into my store, said you were kind of sweaty at the time. You didn't have on a suit back then." And oh, yeah. And he had me do some training for his entire team. And he said he had no idea. He thought I was like an employee because I had on a t-shirt and you're always representing others. So it's not just about you. You represent your race, your color, your creed, your heritage. So we always want to be professional. It's one of those switches where you may clock out, but your respect is always clocked in.
I love that.
Even if you don't have a work shirt on, even if you don't have a company represented hat or whatever it is,
yes, sir.
You are always representing anything you're associated with. So
yes, sir.
That's a big takeaway. Let's talk about questions.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Let's get to it.
Top of the day. So one of our first questions is, do you have a favorite routine? And you actually broke your routine up into the week, into the evenings, and into the weekends and holidays. So tell us a little bit about what you like to keep as a routine.
Well, understand that my parents were both military. My mother believed in structure and processes, and my father was the kind of man that would make me return a chicken nugget because I once ordered a 20-piece and they accidentally gave me 21. So he made me take back that extra nugget. So understand that the way I am, you are a model of your environment.
Dad, can I just get it? Just enough?
It's their fault, not mine. He's like, you didn't pay for that. Say, take it back. What if they gave you 19 nuggets? What would you have done? I go, oh gosh. So that's the cat that raised me.
Love it.
I wake up around 5-ish every day. Holidays, weekends, vacations, doesn't matter. I always get in my toughest things in the morning. That's when my brain is most creative. So between that 5 and 7, I'm writing, I'm journaling, I'm having my to-do list. That's where I feel comfortable, where it gets out of my head and I get it put down. Right around 6:37, that's where the world starts to wake up, so I can start calling people now. I can respond to emails of people saying, oh, up so early. So then I'll go through my routine, my hygiene, my shower, I'll shave, I'll have it, do the hair, do the nails, floss, brush. I always lay my clothes out the morning before. So I had this laid out last night. My wife goes, that's nice. So I passed. Then I get into my workday right around that 8 to 2. Those are the money hours. I need to be talking to people, making phone calls, following up, because that's when people are at their peak. And then around 3 or 4, that's when my brain starts to shut down. So I'll start to do some routine type things that don't require a lot of intellectual power. Around 5 or 6, get the exercise out the way. I walk, I run, I try to get that out the way. Then around 7 to 9, I try to find some time for the wife so we can be together and have our quality time. Around 9 to 10, I will prep for the next day. Then I'm in bed by 10.
What does prep for the next day look like for you?
It depends. If I am traveling, I get my checklist of all of my materials, travel itinerary, and agenda for the client. And I have a separate folder for my confirmation number, hotel, the rental car, and I'll have the contact information for who I reach. So I have all that done so I'm not stressed out the morning of. If I'm staying in town, I'll send reminders to my clients. I'll go by to make sure the office is organized. Any members of my team, I'll let them know Mrs. Smith is coming in. She likes 2 sugars, 1 coffee. She likes 1 room temperature water. We're going to go over the 3 dynamics she wants to encourage for her presentation. So make sure that we print that out and it's on the PowerPoint when she comes in. Yes, sir. So that's kind of the prep.
And if you can do 15% of that communication, you're rocking it out.
When you came by the office to give me that great advice, and I had my checklist and my sheet laid out, I try to make sure that whoever's coming to see me, I don't want them to feel like their time's being wasted. What are we talking about? What are we doing? I feel that we have a professional obligation to always be overly prepared, because my dad taught me you can't have a backup plan until you have a plan.
I like that. I always I did it there.
But you caught it.
Edit that out.
You caught it. That's the key. You caught it.
So it's very respectable that you would say, I don't want to waste anybody's time, because I've found that when somebody, typically, let's say no shows or whatever. Oh, I didn't make it to the calendar. Well, I'm sitting here like at lunch at this area, and I'm realizing that you're on vacation and it didn't make it to your calendar, but the text before says like twice we're going to, I'm probably quick to, and I shouldn't be. I write those people off.
I hear you.
Because for me, I know you're not going to respect my time as much as I do. No, I wouldn't expect anybody to.
Yes, sir.
But to completely disrespect it like that, I'm going to move on.
I hear you. And that's the ideology of several people. I tend to give them 3 chances. Okay. I do. I give them 3 because here's what I do. Here's what I do. One is, let's say a person has no clue about punctuality and responsibility. And let's say that they're 20, 30 years old. When they mess up, this is our opportunity to show them light in a world of darkness.
Fair.
If we just cut them off, that's what they are used to. So we give them a second chance. Now, that second chance, life may happen twice. Funeral procession, long light, traffic accident, technology issue. Okay, now that second one, now you're on standby. Now you're in Malcolmville, right? You're close. After that third one, I know now the issue is not my forgiveness. It's your lack of accountability. So there's no amount of money I can do to help you. So at that point, I write them off, but I give them 3.
Good for you.
And I sleep better at night with my conscience, knowing I tried. I did my part.
All right, I'll go to 2.
Okay, look at you growing. Look at you being mature.
Self-development here, growth.
I got a buddy of mine who, if the meeting starts at 4, around 3:55, he's looking around. If you come in, right at 4 or 4:02ish, his whole demeanor is, you're lazy, not hiring you, doesn't matter what you say, you can't come on time for free, you ain't gonna come on time when I pay you. And here's what's crazy. About 7, 8 out of 10 times, he's right. And I hate it because every time somebody has a genuine, he goes, okay, well, that was that one. So his history of knucklehead people has proven him right. So when you have strong feelings and that shows as a pattern, that becomes your habitual train of thought. So don't get mad if people assume I tell millennials, if the perception is you can't take criticism, and then you're criticized because you have a bunch of typos and you get upset, you've proven them right. I say, don't get mad if you are lazy and you did not read the instructions, you prove them right. So people can be stereotypical and people can be prejudiced and they can think whatever they want to think. Your actions prove them wrong or your actions prove them right. And whatever we choose in our actions, that's on us.
Jen has this very big grin on her face when he's talking about timeliness. What's up, Jen?
As a punctuality struggler, I like the 3 chances.
I get you.
So my philosophy on timeliness is slightly different. When somebody, and you're raised from the military, so I think when somebody says, well, when you're on time, you're late, and if you're late,
early is on time.
I say, no, that's not correct.
Gotcha.
We are not in the military.
Gotcha.
We're not also in Costa Rica where Tico time is 30, 40 minutes late.
Right. Siesta time.
We are on this time.
Right.
And if you say 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock.
Gotcha.
So like if you're even early, I'm like, man, we didn't say 3:50. Now I look late. Mm-hmm. If we wanted to meet 3:50, we should have said 3:50.
I hear you.
So whatever. Okay.
I hear you. For those who are punctually challenged, talking about
be there early,
you have to give numbers. Things like early, late, these are ambiguous ideologies. So instead of saying, I will be there at 4, when you hear 4, let's say, for example, you have a meeting. And let's say that you've never been to that location and you put in your GPS and the GPS says 22 minutes. Here's the trick. Double the travel time.
I just learned this trick.
Double the travel time.
Adult. Mm-hmm.
Just double the travel time. You need to leave your place at 3:20 if it says only 20 minutes. Now, here's what's going to happen. You're not going to leave at 3:20.
Nope.
You're going to leave like 3:28. But you'll get there now 4 minutes early instead of 2 minutes late. Double the travel time.
Is this only if you haven't been to the place before?
I recommend that you double the travel time all the time.
So do not take the travel time, think you can drive a little faster and start to subtract from it.
No, if you can't do math to get on time, you can't do math to be there late. No, no. So what you have to factor in traffic. You want to factor in getting to the parking lot. You want to factor in walking to the front. You want to factor in getting your notes ready. You want to factor in going to the bathroom when you get there. You want to factor in where's the room. You factor in all these things that are time oriented because some of these things you can't control. So the earlier, if you're going to wait someplace, don't wait at your house. Wait in their office. Have your 8 minutes in their office.
Or in your car outside the office.
Or in your car. Absolutely. Absolutely.
The funny thing about this conversation is you say if you've never been there before, like
Right.
I'm probably never going to go to a place at a specific time that I haven't been. Right. Like
I'll drive there.
I'm gonna,
there it is.
right. I'm sliding by like the evening before and like, okay, that's where I'm going to park. That's where, got it.
That's it. I tell my college students, don't just go to the building when you're trying to find your way on campus. Go inside. Is it upstairs? Is it downstairs? Is it down the hall? Is it to the left? Go to the room. Go, got it. That way you know. And that'll take off a lot of the time anxiety that a lot of people experience.
Big time.
You got it.
I'll be in your class.
It'll be a joy.
So we're going to move on to our listeners are aspiring entrepreneurs, mover shaker CEOs.
Congratulations to you all. You can do it.
We've noticed a lot of people like to talk about the successes, and we want to get into the nitty gritty of failure. We don't really see failure as a negative experience. There's always something to learn. Most of our guests feel the same way. Can you tell us about what you consider to be a huge failure?
Absolutely. A huge failure for small business owners is failing to understand your customer. Too many times we fail to customize and we assume that one size fits all. I had a client that had booked me for an engagement and they wanted me to address some of their executive leaders and their frontline staff. I was in the habit of using the word clients and customers. This organization was a group of hospitality professionals. They say guest. They gave me a packet of information, plus they had a website of which I did not review because I had the confidence that I know these folks, I'll be great. They'll love my stuff. So for 45 minutes, I'm up there, do this with your clients, do this with your customers, and you could just see people just cringing. And I'm thinking, man, I hope they're not sick, hope they're okay. And I was informed that I did not understand my audience. And we did handwritten evaluations back then, probably about 100 people. Now, about 7 of them wrote negative comments. 93 gave me rave reviews. The 3 or the 7 that were consistent said, does not know our industry, does not know our client base, does not know our culture. And I was never asked back. And they said, you didn't take the time to learn us. You didn't take the time to know who we are. And that didn't sit well with us. And I still communicate with a lot of them, but that still is a problem where when I go and speak to hospitals, they will say patients, not clients. When I go to speak at universities, they will say staff or students, not members. So that was one of the things I learned quickly about failing to understand your audience can not just hurt you short term, but long term. I've corrected that mistake since then, but back then that was a big one. And I don't want any entrepreneurs listening to this right now. Understand your clients, understand your customers, adapt what you have to what they need, not just what you think is best. Understand what they need first.
You answered on here as well. You're now comfortable saying no to protect professional integrity and enjoy recommending other experts. Can you elaborate on that?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Ooh, sugar. Y'all gonna get a brother in trouble. All right. I was asked to do a presentation on a spirituality topic. Now, my wife is Church of Christ. My brother is Muslim. My mother raised me Methodist. I went to OLPH in Notre Dame, which is Christian, and my father's atheist.
Wow.
So whatever you believe, I've been through it. And I respect people's viewpoints. I was asked to speak on a topic that was outside of my spiritual comfort zone. So I told them, can't do it. They said, well, here's what we're paying. Well, oh, Lord. I said, which Lord you want me to say? You want Jehovah or Buddha? And I was really close to bending my integrity because at the time we needed the money. It was good money. So I go to my wife and I said, honey, here's what they want me to say about spirituality and faith. And she looked at the check and she looked at what they want me to say. She looked at me and she asked one question, Malcolm. Is that what you believe? Like, oh, gosh. I said, no, my love, you know it's not. She goes, I'm sure you do what's right. And then she walks off. Like, crap. crap. So I had to tell them that would not be a good fit. I recommended a person who that's all they talk about. No, they had their PhD in this particular theology, and that person was magnificent. And when the client saw me a few years later, they thanked me for not bending my morals because they hired speakers who did not believe that, and it hurt their credibility later on. And they thanked me for not being part of that. And I was so close to saying yes. I'm so glad I didn't, because so much of what we do as entrepreneurs and as professionals, it goes beyond social media or a billboard. Our reputation is our best marketing tool, so we got to protect it.
And as entrepreneurs, we want to do everything for everybody all the time.
Yes. I can paint your car, cut your grass. Well, your specialty says you do tax preparation. So you can't be everything to everybody. You've got to be a specialist and be authentic in what you do, and be okay with saying that's not my expertise. Let me find someone who will. Because if they can trust you on the little things, they'll trust you on the big things.
Again, if you did about 15% of this guy's recommendation here, you're going to tell us exactly in your words what somebody could do to see a positive ROI in any business that they're in, not just communication.
One, you want to make sure that you're using quantifiable metrics. In other words, you want to have something that is numerical that you can measure. Number of phone calls, amount of money that you generated, number of clients, number of views, how many visits, how many phone calls, something measurable. What people are wanting is value. So when you're looking for something that's ROI, you want to make it quantifiable. Also, make sure that when you're looking at those metrics, make sure it's something that you can control. For example, you can't control how many people tell you yes. You can control how many you ask. You can't control how many times someone picks up a phone. You can control how many people did you call. When we talk about our team, we'll look at these goals, and we'll look at, we need to make this much money by this time frame. We need to have this many keynotes, this many individual clients, this many workshops. Almost clockwork, because I have about probably 90% of my staff are college interns, and I adore working with them. But because they're 18, 19, 20, 21, they're thinking, well, how do I make them say yes? I said, you don't. You offer them, we got orange juice, apple juice, coffee. They may say nothing at all. But if you don't offer something, they can accept something. So I'll say, you need to send these emails. You need to make these phone calls. You need to send these voice messages, because we can control our ROI based on what is done by YOU. Y'all can tweet that one.
Vladimir Phipps heard it here first. So, Vlad, you continue to go in and you say,
he won't let Vlad go.
No,
I'm go back to Vincent.
I'm reprogramming you on my phone. You say what somebody also can do is research company websites, write an article addressing their needs, concerns, key points, identify a person at that company with an email address, ask them for a quote or an intriguing question, add their comments to an article, send them an article, ask what ways you can be of assistance. Yeah.
Yes,
right.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Like, ask somebody how you can tell them what you're doing.
Absolutely. This is one of the ways where I first built my business. I had no clue about how to get clients. I didn't know anything about sales or marketing. My degree was in communication. I didn't know anything about SEO and search engine optimization and return on investment. And I didn't know anything about that.
Or Google reviews.
With no Google. It was more like Ask Jeeves reviews. See, half them don't even know about Ask Jeeves. That's old school right there, bro. That's back when your modem was a dial-up. They're too young.
No, I know Jeeves is.
And all that. Like, she know. One of the things that I did when I first started my business is I would create these impromptu surveys, and I would send them out to people by fax.
A what?
A fax.
What is it? You'd send them fax?
Fax. That's like a letter / email / Instagram that you send. That's a phone call that comes out on a piece of paper. And I would ask them, what are your top 3 communication fears? What are the 4 things that you dread most when giving speeches? What would you love to have? If it was a superpower, what would you love to have in terms of public speaking? And I would take this information And for example, I would get a lot of information back from people who were in the IT field. And I'm thinking that IT people may have challenges being effective on stage because they're so data driven that they might not have that ability to captivate. So I would ask IT people, what are the things you would like to learn? And they would say things like how to talk to people who are non-techie people. What do I do if I've explained it already and they just don't get it? So I took this information and I wrote an article on the top 3 wishes of IT professionals. And people read it. And then when they said, hey, I like that article, I then created a class saying, here are the top 3 contents or learning objectives of this course. And they said, oh, how'd you get this? How'd you come up with this? And I said, I asked IT people just like you what you wanted. So I built a class. And they go, oh, you're an IT pro. You understand our industry. Oh, you're so in tune with what we do. Like, nope, not a clue. I just asked questions and listened and then created something based on what you needed. So that's how I started, where I didn't knock on doors or I didn't make random phone calls. I used an impromptu survey, and from those answers, I customized the content that they said they needed.
I love it. It's pretty simple. Create valid value.
Yes, sir.
And nowadays, we have this thing called an internet.
Yes, sir.
Where you can actually see what other people are asking already.
Absolutely.
You don't even have to create the facts and find the people and send it to them.
You got ChatGPT, you got Google, you got LinkedIn. Now, here's what I would recommend. For those that want to use those avenues, be careful, because I don't want you to get lazy. You can get so much information that it becomes too broad. And when you're too general, you lose specificity. You want to look for human resources is different than information technology. Information technology is different than tourism and hospitality. That's different than a field such as transportation. So have little niches of those same areas. That way you seem more customized. Because if you're too general, if you say everybody's my client, nobody's your client. It doesn't matter. If you have the best hot wings in town, you're not going to do well at a vegan convention.
Shout out to Laurel. I love it. We're going to move on to a book recommendation, and you picked my favorite book, Lead Out Loud. Tell us about Lead Out Loud.
Lead Out Loud encapsulates the 4 dynamics of interpersonal communication. If you or anyone you know want to be more effective in conflict resolution, leadership, emotional intelligence, and conflict resolution, you want to get Lead Out Loud. It is a book that includes stories and examples of how to adjust in real world communication. It's not just enough to be smart or gifted or well-connected or even wealthy or even educated. You have to be able to adapt your approach to others. The old ideology being raised here in the South is to treat other people the way that you want to be treated. I recommend that you look at a transition on that ideology taught by Lead Out Loud, and that is to treat other people the way that they want to be treated. If you are a bottom line, no nonsense kind of person, that's who you are. Embrace that. But what if you talk to somebody who is not that way? They're more chit-chatty. They're more conversational. If you're laid back and reserved, and you talk to somebody who's more upbeat and energetic, you just can't be laid back with them because they'll think that you have no interest. So Lead Out Loud teaches you what style you are, what styles others are, and gives you communication strategies of how to adapt. Because the more you can be pliable in your communication, it gives you that intellectual flexibility that we all need to be successful. Because people are different. We have to make sure that our communication evolves with those intellectual and interpersonal differences.
Where can we find that book?
You can find that book at my website, vincentphipps.com. You can also go to Google. You can also go to Amazon. My recommendation is go to vincentphipps.com. That way I don't have to share 40% of my money with Amazon. Or just come by my office in Chattanooga, Tennessee at 1400 Macaulay Avenue, almost across the street from the Warner Park Zoo.
If you pick it up in person and bring a smoothie for lunch, he might even sign it for you. So.
I will make you a smoothie.
I know that.
I'd be happy to sign it for you.
Give us a nug real quick where you talk about knowing who you are, knowing who other people are. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we can't give a DISC assessment to someone when we meet them and say, please tell me who you are.
Yes, sir.
We've talked about your book. We've talked about Surrounded by Idiots. We've talked about colors. We've talked about, however, give us a nug real quick, how we can quickly identify somebody's personality and how we can start mimicking or talking to them in their color or whatever it is.
When you mention DISC or Enneagram or Myers-Briggs, there's a plethora of tools out there. LEAD is one of those strategies that is a compilation of them all. Here's what makes LEAD different about how you can address people's styles quickly. The first is to identify a person's level of extroversion. If they introduce themselves to you, they're outgoing. If they're looking at you, outgoing. If you can hear them in a room above everybody else, outgoing. So you don't have to walk up to a loud person and say, "Are you extroverted? Are you?" You'll know. That's first. Second is you have to look at a cross dichotomy between where that person's emphasis is. There are two dichotomies. The first is some people are focused on feelings. Some are focused on facts. People who are focused on feelings will talk about emotional stuff, children, relationships, sports. They will talk about things that bring them an emotional fulfillment. People who are factual based will talk about events. They'll talk about data. They'll talk about books. They'll talk about things that are going to be factually oriented. So when you talk to someone, look to see if they're upbeat or reserved. If they're upbeat, let them talk. They'll love it. If they're reserved, ask them questions that are what or how questions. It'll get them talking more. If a person is keeping their distance from you, maybe 3 to 4 feet, and they're not making any efforts to high five or knuckle pound or chest bump, they're going to be more project faced. It doesn't mean that they are impersonable or aren't people that like being around others. It's just their preference is they're not touchy people. They're not come hug me people. They're not high five people. Respect that and keep that distance. So look to see how outgoing they are and then look to see how they may engage with others. And that'll give you some quadrants to know how to approach that person. Adapt to what you see them doing in that environment.
It's a lot to take in.
I understand. My wife thinks she is an upbeat, energetic person. She is upbeat and energetic only around her laid-back friends. So she's convinced she's the life of the party, but all of them are quiet. Put her in a room of other energetic people, she becomes a wallflower. So when people make the assumption that when they see her around her group of friends in a small setting, they think she's gregarious. So they will see her in a public setting, they'll say, "Hey, girl." She's like, "I don't know you, back up." And they think she's rude. She is just very selective about who she lets in her circle. That's why you treat people the way they act in that environment. Is that better?
So the act of just mirroring is very simple, right?
Absolutely.
You just try to maybe have to ask them a couple questions to kind of fill that personality out. I really like the way that you put the personality in that environment.
Absolutely.
Because people can be
situational.
Sure. That's cool. So before we wrap up with our last question here, I would love for you to tell us, if you would, how you booked your first speaking engagement.
It was an accident. This goes back to those of you who still remember dial-up and Ask Jeeves and fax machines. There was a software called Speech Dragon, voice recognition software. I accidentally booked a $10,000 speaking engagement thinking it was only going to be $1,000. Speech Dragon lets you talk, and it is the voice to text back then. It's about a good 15 years old. I think it still exists. I ended up having a Skype call. Remember Skype?
Oh, yeah.
I had a Skype call, and they'd asked me to send them an invoice, and it was supposed to be for $1,000. Now, you're supposed to go through this process of saying words like the round cow rhymes with the vowel, so it would get your speech recognition. I did not read the instructions. Imagine that. I did not follow the instructions, so I would just speak at my normal speaking rhythm, which is about the rate I'm talking now. And I was supposed to say 1000, then pause. I'm thinking it has to have decimals. So I said 10000. Came out 10,000. I thought it was going to send them an invoice for 1,000. They send me a check about a week later that was $5,000. I'm thinking they're only supposed to give me $1,000. So I showed it to my wife, and she's thinking, did you agree to give the same
that chicken nugget
5
back
times? And I'm thinking, what in the heck? And I'm thinking, how do I fix this? I'm thinking I gotta fess up, and I put the check in the I put the check in the mail, and I'm thinking, okay, I'll apologize later. Then I'm thinking, well, when I get there, I would just fess up and say, look, I cashed the check. Here's $4,000 back. I can give you the same speech 4 times. I'm trying to figure out. I'm thinking I'm trying to make this work, Malcolm. And the client sends me a text. They send me not a text. They send me a facsimile where they say, we need to speak with you about payment. I'm like, fudge, they got me. So we do the Skype thing again, and they get on the call and say, Mr. Phipps, we're sure by now you've noticed that there's a problem with the check. And I'm thinking, yeah, I did see that. And they said, well, we want to know that we're open to options of how we can fix this. And I'm about to ask, can I pay it back over a time? Can you have a credit for future speeches? I asked one question that saved my butt because I'm thinking I was supposed to get $1,000. So I asked them, how can we make this right? They said, we're certain that a speaker of your caliber is used to full payment. So we apologized, and instead of sending you $10,000, we only sent you the deposit of $5,000. If it's all right with you upon arrival, can we pay you the other $5,000? If I was holding a phone, I would have dropped it, but I was on the headset back then. And I'm so glad that my camera was so shoddy they could not see my full facial expressions. I said to them, these mistakes happen. $5,000 upon arrival will be just fine. And that was my first speaking engagement where I was paid.
So you did not give the chicken nugget back.
I kept that chicken nugget, but it was ethical. That was my mistake, not theirs. I kept
it was just a typo.
I kept that nugget and the sauce. It was a typo. It was more of a talk-o. Thank you, Speech Dragon.
Shout out to Speech Dragon. I love that. It's funny. Before we wrap up, is there anything else that you would like to tell our listeners?
Absolutely. First, thanks you all for having me. You all are spectacular. I have had the pleasure of seeing you grow, seeing your company grow. I have recommended you to others, and I just appreciate the time that you all spend with your clients and what you do in the community. It is greatly appreciated. You may not hear thank you as much as you should, but know that what you're doing is resonating ripples, not just for small business owners, but for our entire Chattanooga community and anybody that needs to see how to run a successful team, how to build a business, how to do it with fun, how to do it with love, and how to do it with respect. So thank you for what you and all of your folks are doing. Chattanooga Home Inspectors is killing it. Keep it up, sir. Thank you.
We appreciate that. We give all the credit to a well-assembled team.
Oh, well, they do a great job. The things I want them to know, if anyone is wanting to improve their public speaking or presentation skills, we have the 2 classes in Chattanooga this year that's called True. The T stands for how you recognize your target audience. The R stands for how you can rationalize what the problem is. The U is to find your own unique voice in your storytelling. And the E is how to correlate your expertise to bring value to others. So those are the 4 dynamics that we teach in True. Also, if there's anyone out there who is an entrepreneur or a small business owner that wants to get paid to speak, and they want to be professional motivational speakers, I teach a 3-day workshop that's called Pro Speakers Kit. It gives you all the tools you need of how to get booked and how to share your mess with the stage and find another way to monetize your messages. That's on November 8th, 9th, and 10th, also in Chattanooga. And they can go to eventbrite.com or to my website, Vincent Phipps, VincentPhipps.com. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll get updates on my articles. If you follow me on YouTube or on Instagram or Facebook, you'll see videos of my travels and updates on where I'll be speaking next. We also have coupons and discount codes and promo codes on all of them. So if you want to attend those classes and you want to also be cost effective, use those promo codes, save you some money.
I love it. Sounds like we're wrapping up at this very moment, but what we are going to do is one last question to Vincent.
Yes, sir.
To Vlad, and it's because your answer is just so, I feel, simple and easy and obvious. Mm-hmm. But if you could go back to square one and you could tell younger Vlad something, what would you tell yourself?
Get a mentor. Get some help. Don't try to figure this out on your own. There are so many people who are wanting to help other people. One of the things I found out is that I see this GoFundMe a lot by students or young people. And one of my students asked me, how did I get my first car? Did you have a GoFundMe? And I said, my GoFundMe was a lawnmower. So one of the things that you need is to know that there are people who have walked the path that we are trying to traverse. And when you get a mentor, don't get caught up over if they're male or female or black and white. Can they help you or not? And you want to surround yourself around people who are a little bit smarter than you, a little bit more successful than you, who made some mistakes that you're trying to avoid. Be around those people. You don't need to be around perfect people. You need to be around people that want perfection out of you. So get a mentor, get some help, and don't try to get paid for every piece of it. Don't just pick someone's brain. Pay people for their time. Give them $25 for an hour. Give them $55. I assure you, if you pick the right person, that $50 will save you thousands. So get some help, get them expert, and find someone that believes what you're doing, and make sure that you have someone that's going to hold you accountable. Because a good mentor has these two things. They have a responsibility and a respondability. The responsibility is they really want you to do well. There's no vested interest, there's no hidden agenda. The respondability is, can you reach them? Will they call you back? People talk about Les Brown or Oprah Winfrey or Tony Robbins. They're my mentors. You ain't got their phone number. You can't ask them for help. You need the people that will be there for you. And the people who are mentioned are fantastic, but they may not have the means or the time to give you the same type of investment as someone down the street. So you want to make sure you have a mentor has a responsibility for your well-being and a respondability that you can connect with.
Did you have a mentor?
I have several. One of my first mentors was Dr. Ralph Hillman, who taught me about the National Speakers Association. Then I had Bruce Wilkinson, who is also a speaker, and he brought me into the speaking world. Then there is Dr. Delatoro McNeil, who is one of my professional speech coaches. Then there is Crystal Washington, who is a Hall of Fame speaker. She taught me about how to use technology and how to use the information to make my speaking business more prodigious with the systems. So I've had a ton of professional speaking mentors. My parents were mentors. My coaches at OLPH and Notre Dame were mentors. You can have mentors plural because you got multiple problems. You need multiple solutions.
Very well said. Coaches, mentors, different walks, different specific reasons to have specific coaches. I've always said, and I wrote in my journal to the kids, whatever you spend on coaching, it will pay dividends.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Vincent, thank you very much for your time. One more time, True is being taught June 28th and September 27th here in Chattanooga. Where we can find that at your website, which is
VincentPhipps.com, or just go to eventbrite.com and you just type in my name and you'll see all of the events of which you can register.
Cool. Thank you very much for your time, sir. We appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Square One podcast, brought to you by Omni Home Services. We represent Chattanooga Home Inspector, Nuclear Pest Control, Elevate Home Staging Design, Radon Eraser, and hopefully more business entities in the future. We release a new episode every Thursday. If you like this episode, share it with your friends, neighbors, real estate agents, or whoever. Make sure you subscribe to Spotify, Apple, or wherever the hell you listen to your podcasts.